what's up, capybaras? Welcome back to a new video on this channel. So in today's video, guys, I am finally doing another unreleased car review. So yeah, it's been a bit now since I've done an unreleased car review, but thanks to Hunter, I have actually been hooked up with the brand new FIAT 124 Spider. So as most of you guys probably know, these things are pretty much just like Miatas. They just look like quite a lot different. I mean, they don't look crazy different, but I don't know. It gives off a different vibe, I guess. But as you guys can see, these things look super sick, and also they do have interiors, which is a nice touch. But yeah, so the trims we actually have here is the Lusso trim, the Classico trim, and the Abarth trim. So the first trim that I'm going to be showcasing here is my personal favorite trim, and this is the Abarth trim. So as you guys can see, it has some nice black lining on it, so it's sort of like a black and white tone, and it looks super nice in my opinion. I really like it when they do these to cars. Some people don't tend to like this sort of two-tone type design, but personally I quite like it depending on what color it is. So this thing actually does have a manual shifter, as you guys can see right here. And also comparing to the other trims, it has some really aggressive front and rear bumpers. So you guys can see that the front bumpers are sticking out a lot more than on the other trims. And same thing on the rear as well, how it's sort of like, it's not crazy different on the rear side actually, but it is still slightly different because you do actually have quad exhaust at the back. And it also has a slightly different grille as well. Also, a little cool thing is that the Abarth trim does actually have a custom sort of gauge area. So as you guys can see, the middle gauge is actually all red, where if we look on the other trims, they're just all sort of black, which they still look nice, but I do really like how the sportier trim does have that little attention to detail. Also, another thing to do with this thing's branding is that it does actually have red badges on it, which also just makes this thing look even more sportier. So, you know, when you see this thing driving, you'll definitely be able to tell that this is definitely the sporty trim, because as you guys can see on the other two trims, they're just sort of basic silver logos, which definitely don't look bad, but you can definitely tell that they're not as sporty as the Abarth trims. So now we're going to be moving on to the Lusso trim and talking about some things about this variation of the vehicle. So the first major difference is that you guys can see this thing only has dual exhaust on it. So compared to the Abarth trim, this thing actually has quad exhaust, where this only has dual exhaust. So it's still not terrible, but that's definitely a noticeable thing that is missing. Also, you guys can see that the interior kind of looks like a sort of beige, sort of leather-ish color compared to the Abarth trim, which is just an all black sporty interior. Also, the gauges do not have that little red sort of area inside of them, and also the badges are both silver. And also, as you guys can see, it does have chrome surrounding the windshield area, unlike the Abarth trim, which was literally just like matte black. So guys, now I'm moving on to the Classico trim, and this thing doesn't have much major differences comparing it to the Lusso trim. However, there are some slight differences here and there, and the main differences here are actually in the lights of the trim. So first of all, as you guys can see on the Lusso trim, we do actually have fog lights. However, as soon as we move over to the Classico trim, you guys can see that there are actually no fog lights, and it is instead replaced by basically just like sort of stretching the grille out a bit. And also, as you guys can see, the headlights are slightly lower end. So as you guys can see, they do look slightly different if we just compare the both here. But that's basically it, and we are going to get into performance in a bit, but visually, this is basically all the differences between all of the trims. Alright guys, so now we're actually going to be getting into reviewing the different trims. So first off here, I'm going to start off with the Abarth trim. So first of all, I'm going to actually test out the engine sound on this thing. So as you guys can hear, it has a pretty nice startup and also a pretty clean idling sound as well. I really like how Greenville's idling sounds have improved over time. Anyways, let's pop this thing into neutral and test out its revving. So as you guys can hear there, it doesn't sound crazy, but for a thing that's basically a Miata on the inside, it actually is pretty nice. And also when you rev this thing, you can clearly hear a clean turbo. So I'll just do that one more time for you guys. So yeah, very cool. And then also you guys can see the tail lights and the headlights as well. So now guys, moving on to the indicators. As you guys can see on these tail lights here, they're kind of like rings that surround them, so they look very nice. Also on the side, we have some indicators right here, which are both identical to each other. And then as you guys can see at the front here, the blinkers are actually at the bottom area, so they're actually not on the main headlights themselves, but I kind of like this look personally. Now everybody's favorite part, let's test out the horn. That horn is extremely unique in my opinion, guys. I've never heard that horn before in my entire life. And then also reviewing the interior from the inside here, you guys can see we have some very nice lights that sort of glow up. Alright guys, so now let's move on to the Lusso trim here. Alright, so let's test out the startup sound. So I think that's literally pretty much the exact same as the Abarth trim. And yeah, I wasn't really expecting anything crazily different there. Anyways, now let's test out the blinkers. So as you guys can see, they're basically the same. They have rings around on the tail lights. They also have the same blinkers on the sides, as you guys can see, just like the Abarth trim. And the blinkers at the front are also identical. And also, I almost forgot, but let's do a revving test real quick. So this thing also has a turbo just like the Abarth trim, and pretty much the engine sounds the exact same. And then the interior does look a little bit different on the inside. So first of all, you guys can notice we don't actually have any lights on the inside, even when the engine is switched on. And then we also don't have the red gauge cluster as well, like was on the Abarth trim. And the seats are also slightly different colored as well. And now time for a horn test. The exact same horn as well. Alright, so now let's move on to the Classico trim. Alright, so let's get into the car and do a quick startup test here. So again, literally the exact same startup sound. And then let's also do a little bit of a revving test here. So I guess this thing has an electric motor, guys, so that's pretty cool. So for some reason right now the revving on this thing is broken, so it kind of just sounds like a Tesla. But hey, I guess that kind of gives us a in-depth sound of the turbo. But this will definitely be fixed when the car actually releases. The revving sound, from my understanding, is literally going to be the exact same on this trim, just like all the other trims that I've reviewed. And then also we have the same blinkers on the rear side, same blinkers on the side of the vehicle, and also the same blinkers at the front. And then we also have a horn test right here. So yeah, when it comes to everything about the sounds of the car and like all of that, like the lighting of the car, the sounds and all of that, it's pretty much all the same. So there's not really any major differences there. However, when we actually get into the performance side of things, you guys will probably be surprised to see some differences. Alright, so first of all, I'm going to start off with the Classico trim, and we'll just see how this thing drives, see the top speed of it and all of that cool stuff. Okay, so right now it kind of seems like this thing doesn't actually have any driving sounds whatsoever. So yeah, let's just ignore that for now, I guess. It shouldn't be that big of a deal though, since it will be fixed by the time the car releases. However, I'm sure the main thing that you guys actually care about here is the performance of this thing. So right now it doesn't seem to have crazy performance, but it is definitely pushing. And overall it is definitely pretty smooth to drive. It seems like it has some good handling on it. Also, it's pretty nice to drive around in first person as well. Alright, so let's do a 0 to 60 test right here. So in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so it didn't start off amazingly there, but as you guys can see, we have actually gotten up to 60 decently quick. And now let's just push our way all the way up to top speed here and see what speed this thing maxes out at. And surprisingly, this thing maxes out at around about 140 miles per hour, which I genuinely didn't really expect, especially for a vehicle like this. But that is definitely really surprising to see. So the Classico trim might not actually be a bad option for those of you guys who don't want to spend a ton of money. And plus, this thing does still look pretty sporty, regardless of it not really being the sportiest trim. Alright guys, so now I am moving on to the Lusso trim, which luckily enough does have engine sounds, so that's definitely a good thing to know. Alright, never mind guys, I may or may not have lied, because turns out this thing also doesn't have engine sounds. I'm not exactly sure why, because they did seem to be working earlier, but I mean, these things are sort of just like test cars, so I guess it's kind of like understandable that they may break. However, again, we are mainly here for the performance differences, so let's get this thing up to the highway here. And did a little bit of a drift there, but yeah. Anyways guys, let's rev this thing up and do a quick 0 to 60 test. So in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so we are quickly going up here. So it seems to have very similar performance to the Classico trim, which I'm not necessarily that surprised about. I feel like this trim is slightly more sportier looking than the Classico trim is, but I mean, if you're not really phased by the looks, then there's no really any use of spending like the extra money, since they both literally have identical performance to each other. But still though, I would personally rather go for this just because of the better looks in my opinion, but again, they're both literally the same performance wise. Alright guys, so now I am moving over to the Abarth trim. So for some reason the sound on this thing actually does work, so I don't know if the other two trims just don't actually have sound on them or what it is, to be honest, but at least we finally have sound on a vehicle here. Now also when it comes to the engine sounds on the these trims, I'm pretty sure they're all the exact same. Also basing off the revving sounds, they were both the exact same, so I honestly wouldn't be too concerned with that. Anyways guys, once we get over to the straight part of the highway here, we will start doing a 0 to 60 test. Alright, so in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we got a pretty good launch there. I'm not sure if this thing is any quicker, but we will definitely see. It seemed like it got to 0 to 60 a bit faster there. Now it's just really to tell if this thing actually has a faster top speed or not. So we're hitting 140 now, and we actually are stuck at 140 here. So according to Hunter, this trim actually does have a slight power boost, which should hopefully show in the 0 to 60 test. If not though, on release at least, this thing should have a slight power boost compared to the other trims. So I'm not sure if by that he meant that it accelerates faster or it has a higher top speed or what it was. This trim is definitely a lot better with performance, or at least it will be when it actually gets into the game. But even driving right here, I think I can actually feel a slight difference in performance, which is nice. So even though the top speed might basically be the same, this thing does actually seem to accelerate a little bit faster than the other trims. Also, I'm not exactly sure on the pricing of these vehicles yet. However, if I were to guess, I don't think they would be that crazy of an amount for most people. And I'm pretty sure at least the Abarth trim will probably need something like the sports pass, but it really just depends. But yeah guys, that's pretty much gonna be it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.